Hello pretties, welcome to Vibstrail. So today I have my Eyeshadow Obsessions series project pan challenge finale. I'm not really sure what it is, but this was created by GEEK and the goal was to use all his palettes 20 times. So my goal at the beginning of the year was honestly to just use them all 20 times, and by the end of the year I completed my goal of using all of my palettes 20 times except for one. And that does not include the palettes that I bought or I got in December of 2022, because I got these two palettes in December 21, and my head's already there. And so I didn't want to include them in there because I literally just got them. I haven't even opened the Natasha Denona. I got it in the last week or so. So haven't even opened that one. So I just want to do a wrap up of this and just my thoughts over the whole experience, because it was a challenge. It was not going to be as smooth sailing as I thought it would be. I thought I was going to be done with this project by August. It's December 2021 and I'm kind of done. Or I'm done. I'm as done as it is because I'm over it. So we just gotta wrap this up. And what I'm gonna do 2022, we're not gonna introduce what I'm gonna do in 2022 because we're gonna switch things up. So first off, the palette that was not included is this one right here from Pixie, because I was unofficially trying to pan it, which I'm not officially gonna start panning in 2022. So watch out for that. So there's that. Okay, so the last two palettes that I rolled into the project were Persona Identity 1, Sweet Talk, as well as Proceed with Caution. So I'm just going to do a quick roundup of my thoughts over the whole experience. What I've learned is I really like this palette, but I absolutely do not care for this one or this one right here. So there's that. The palette itself worked perfectly. The culture was really, really nice. I was actually a little disappointed to get this in the project, because I recently hit pan on this one in a different project and I just didn't want to roll it in just yet. But I used it super easily to use. The black was very much needed. The hazard was growing on something more smoky. I even used this shade. It just honestly worked so perfectly well. So I'm actually really glad I hit my goal relatively quickly. Sweet Talk, if y'all don't know, was in my palettes in the shopping blog, so I can link that so if you want to check that out. And since putting in this project, it is no longer in the shopping blog. I decided I am going to keep it. However, there are two shades that I did ended up handing away to my sister, and she likes glitter shadows. I don't, so I just gave this to my sister. And then there's two shades, these ones right here, I really could not care less for. I kind of like this one a little bit more than I like this one, but this one right here, I could not care less for it. I really learned to appreciate these deeper shades right here because I don't have too many of this colors, like a deep mustard or a deep coral like that. I don't have that. I have a couple of like wine colors, but not too many. I really ended up liking this shade right here as well as this one right here. The ones that I like, I don't normally gravitate towards, is these two shimmers right here. But overall, I learned to appreciate the palette a little more. Was it worth the purchase? Probably not. There's a reason I took a really long time to buy it, and I probably could have done without it. And then the Identity palette, this palette has been honestly a huge struggle for me. I'm like having a hard time holding it. There you go. I was holding it backwards. And that's because these two shades, this one is supposed to be like more warm or more neutral, but it really leans very cool and it doesn't look too well on my skin tone. But I was able to find a way to use it by itself as a transition shade. I just had to go really light-handed. This shade, I can use it in my outer corner, but it's just so cool tone. It's a little too gray, even though it's supposed to be a brown, but it's gray on me because of my undertone. So I was really struggling with that one. But the bottom shades are really great. The plum, very nice and beautiful. The shimmers here are the absolute standout knockout. These two right here are absolutely beautiful, and I really enjoyed it. I was able to work with the two shades that I was struggling with. My problem is that I feel like if your transition shade or your crease shade is not good and you don't have a good base, because that's how you're gonna like use to like build your whole look, I think it can honestly ruin the entire look and you end up just really covering up to save it. But if the undertones don't mesh well with the one that you put on top, even that will still not fix it. So because the two transition shades of this palette do not work for me that well, it really is it's making me struggle with the entire palette as a whole. So there's that. Since then, I did this update 8 months ago, and here we are, finally me doing the update. So since then, I rolled in all of this palettes, and I actually did finish my goal of like using them 20 times, except for Life's a Draft. So I have them all right here. I did actually end up using them. Except for Life's a Draft, instead of using Life's a Draft 20 times, I used it 15 times. And you know what? I'm calling it. It's good. I'm okay with it. It is what it is. So Boss Babe, this one, I used it. I got my 20 uses super easily. I always went for these two shades right here, and sometimes I like dug around for these two. Super easy to use. Really nice quality because I love the Los Angeles palette. Another Los Angeles palette I rolled right after that is Nudie number 2. I have them in order in the way they were like added into the thing. Nudie number 2 was another one that I did not have any issues using. It rolled really well. Even when I was trying to do more like warm or neutral shades, this shade right here worked really well for me for things like that. If I wanted to do something a little more rosy, the glittery shades. Again, this one, easy dream to work with. We had Sleigh Bell. Sleigh Bell was one of the absolute hardest palettes, and it stuck around in the project for way too long because I just could not hit those 20 uses. Eventually, I just gave up and used the one shade that I told myself was not going to be the shade I used, which is the cream shade. I think for the last like 5 uses, I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to go get this one right here, and I'm just going to use it just to get the 20 uses done, and that's it. The reason is because it doesn't have really a good transition shade. I've said this before. I wish instead of this white shade, we had a brown, like a mid-tone brown, like the one I have on Boss Babe, or instead of this Wish List, we had that, because it needs it. It needs a transition shade. I could have reached for these two right here a little bit more to try to get those uses, but I really tried to go for these two when I was trying to get uses, which was probably my bad where I effed up, but it is what it is. We got the uses done eventually, but it was a struggle. This one, again, Breeze, I got my uses really quickly. It's Give It To Me Straight by Colourpop. It's one of my favorite palettes. Absolutely a dream, easy to use. If you want to get something one more warm, one more cool, a little bit deeper. I actually have a really nice pan in this like mid-tone transition shade. So overall, this easy peasy. Easy peasy, y'all. Alright, let's see. We have the Cute AF palette from Colourpop. Another one where I did not struggle. I got this 20 in real quickly, and that's because of this shade right here, which I've mentioned before is my absolute favorite transition shade, and it's called Note to Self. I wish they had this in a single. It has a dip. You can kind of see it right there. One of my favorite shades. Went for it all the time. Sometimes I went for some of these more bronzy shimmers if I wanted something different. Super easy to use. Another one easy where I just got my 20 uses in right away is Nudie Patootie. Nudie Patootie has been used and abused, but you would not tell just by looking at it. It actually has quite a few dips going in quite a few of these mattes, and I really like the shimmers. Surprisingly, the two shades I thought would use the most are these two right here, the two foil shades, and I rarely use them. But regardless, I still love this palette. This is a palette that if something were to happen to it, I would repurchase it. So there's that. Lime Crime Venus. This one was one where I struggled to get my 20 uses. Holy bejesus, let me take this because of glare. It's surprisingly cool toned. I ended up going a lot for the deeper shades right here to like just like deepen up the outer corners, and that's how I ended up using them a handful of times. I went for these two right here. The formula and quality is fine. I'm just not inspired to graph with this palette, and I've never been able to create an actual color story from this palette. This is one of them seriously debating declaring. It was in my chopping block video, and I'm like really debating declaring it. At First Sight, there's another one that was super easy to get my 20 uses, and that's because of this shade right here, Old Growth. I'm not sure if you can see, but it has a really nice dip going in there. I was hitting like this transition shades right here were the killer, and I guess the other palettes that I was using at that time had a lot of pink in it because I ended up using Old Growth the most, but the absolute standouts were these right here. And then I sometimes was craving doing some green looks, so I really stuck to this area right here. So overall, the palette, I got my looks or my 20 uses very quickly with this one. Another one, there was like zero struggle, was Wild Nothing. And I'm not surprised because the palette itself is super bland. but especially this bottom row right here is the absolute standout for me in this palette, and I just end up using it a lot. I did use this green a handful of times, and I used this corally shade a couple of times, but it's honestly quite light, so you can't really see it too much in my skin tone, which I found out the hard way. But overall, easy peasy for me to get in. I need to go get my charger, so FYI, let me pause you for a minute. Okay, I'm a little out of breath, but we're back. So this is where we started bringing in some of my newer palettes that I got in the year. So you're gonna see that a lot. The rest of the palettes are ones that are not really showcased. So there's that. All right, so Candy Skies is the Laura Los Angeles and Aaron Weaver palette that came out, and it's actually quite colorful. It's just pastels. So this one I did have a slightly harder time using because it was harder to incorporate into looks because the rest of the palettes were somewhat neutral. But I was able to use it with relative ease considering it's a colorful palette, because my Party Animal palette from Laura Los Angeles, I struggled to use it the 20 times, but this one, considering it's a colorful pastel rainbow palette, I used it pretty quickly, and I was able to get all my uses that I needed. So overall, not bad, especially considering the whole situation. And the monotypes that I made wearable looks out of just this palette was amazing. So there's that. The Sigma Enchanted palette. This is a palette that it was relatively easy to hit the goals, but the ride was a struggle. Was I able to incorporate into looks? Yes. The problem was the looks were shit. And I was really struggling with it, because at first I came for the mattes, because I love mattes. That's my first thing I thought about was, let's hit those mattes, y'all. I was so excited for it, but turns out these mattes are ashy, y'all. There's another way I can say this, but they're ashy, and I'm not particularly very dark in skin tone, but the ash that came out of this was so drastic, I just couldn't. This shade right here was the hardest shade to use. It looks brown, but it was gray. This shade right here, I'm about to really dig into it. Okay, so you see quite a bit. I grabbed a lot. I'm gonna swatch it on my arm, and you can barely see it, and if I just blend it a little bit, it's gone. It's absolutely gone, and in my eyes, you can't see it. And so if I try to put anything on top, it's gonna make it look gray because it's so cool pink. So this palette was a strong goal, but I was able to get my uses by the shimmers, which the shimmers were also not my favorite. So I am really deterred from buying another Sigma palette because I just struggled so much. I just wasn't expecting this palette to, one, be the mattes to be ashy on me, because I can sometimes struggle with that because I'm very olive warm toned, but not something I struggle with normally. So this was a disappointment. I put it in my disappointing videos, that top 5, bottom 5. I talked about it. This was a huge disappointment. Could I guess 20 uses? Yes. Was it worth the 20 uses? No. No, it wasn't. Alright, the only palette that I didn't get my goal in was the Life's a Draft from Ofra and Samantha March. Honestly, this is the only thing I own from Ofra, and based off of this, I would potentially be interested in trying more from them. However, I'm not sure how I feel about the brand in general. The only reason I even bought this palette was because of Samantha March. I'm a huge fan of Samantha March, and so it shouldn't be a surprise. But actually, for a mauve cool toned palette, I had a really easy time with these because I was honestly super scared that just I struggle with the Enchanted palette, I was feeling that this was going to be the same thing, where it was going to be too cool toned and it was just going to look ashy and muddy on my skin and really not flattering at all. But that was not the case at all. They were surprisingly pigmented. They were surprisingly not ashy except for one shade. Sorry, I thought I had to sneeze. And it's this one right here, which is 23. And that's because this, out of all of the shades, is actually quite cool toned, where the other ones lean cool tone, but really just more mauve plum, where this one was more cool gray, and that's the only shadow that I struggled with. But if I just like laid it down and used something else to blend it out, it wouldn't look so bad. So even that was able to work. The only thing that I've not yet used in its intended purposes in this palette is this highlighter, and that's because, do you see how light that highlighter is? I'm just scared that it's gonna be way too light on me. The bronzer and the blush actually worked really, really well, but Samantha's a little pasty and I'm not, and I'm just like scared that it's gonna be entirely too light, especially because of how blinding it is. I've tried to like blend it into my skin and it doesn't look too bad, where it actually does blend, so I think I may be able to get away with it where I don't have to use like I won't get like a white cast on it, but I'm just not confident in it. But overall, quite surprised. The reason I didn't get my 5 uses is because honestly, I finished all the other palettes, like literally every other palette before I did this one. I still needed like 8 uses, and I was able to use it like 3 more times by itself. But I just don't want to do a lot of mauve paint tones during the holidays because I just didn't feel like it. I wanted to do more like greens and warms, and it just wasn't what I wanted to use, and I didn't want to force myself to use it 5 times just to get it done. So I was like, you know what, let's just call it. I do like the palette overall. Morphe 24G. This was also palette. Okay, if you hear that, it's my dog. They have a bunch of toys from their stocking stuffings, and they've just been loving life. They have so many new toys. And she's playing with one of our new ones right now, and she's enjoying life. Okay, so for G, this was another palette that was in my chopping block where I was like, I just don't know how I feel about it. My biggest concern with this palette is the sheer size of it. It is massive. Let me pull out some palettes for comparison purposes so you can understand. So this is the Natasha Denona, the Meaty Salas. Like, holy fuck, right? Pulled out some other ones. One that people mostly own. Sorry, I wasn't prepared. So if you had a little earthquake in your screen, it's not a real earthquake, it's just the screen. Okay, so I have the So Jaded from Kathleen Light. Again, holy fuck, right? Athena, can you stop? Thank you. And then I have the Jaclyn Hill and Morphe palette. Again, another really, really big one, but still significantly smaller. So, holy fuck. All right, let me stop cussing. So the palette itself is real struggle because it's at the bottom of the drawer. It's so big, but I will say my 20 uses hit him so nicely. The quality of the palette, oh shit, it's actually very nice. The shimmers are beautiful, the mattes blend awesome, and I really like it. I went on a hunt because I'm planning on declutter through my entire eyeshadow collection, trying to find dupes for the palette, you know, like shadow dupes. And so I marked them in the little sheet here, and all the ones with the little things on it I was able to find dupes for. Okay, that's not really helpful because it's glaring. Does that make it better? Yeah, a little bit, not really. Anyway, I was not able to find dupes for all of them, surprisingly. And the ones that I did find, they were like questionable dupes. But there's a lot of shadows that I really like that I don't have dupes for. And the quality, again, is amazing. And whenever because I had it out on my desks, when I did like reach out for it, loved every single look, the way I incorporated. If a look I didn't like and I needed to save it, this is the palette I went to go save that look. And it was a lifesaver. It's just the size of it. I never reach for it because how big it is, but when I do reach for it, I love it. So this one's a struggle. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm planning on doing that declutter at the beginning of 2022. I might end up filming it this week because I'm off of work this whole week. So I'm going to do a lot of pre-filming during this week because I just want to get a lot of videos done. And the declutter is going to be one of them. So I'm still not sure how I feel about it. So we'll put that there. And another newer palette for me is the Red Dragon and Judy. I absolutely love Judy. I've been following Judy since she only had like 20,000 subscribers. And although I don't buy a lot from Colourpop, and she doesn't do all the Colourpop 3 looks one palette like she used to, I still love her channel because of her 3 looks one palette. Even if I'm not buying that palette, the amount of inspiration that I get from her and the amount of times that I've recreated looks that she created for other palettes, the coloring collection I have is too many to count. I did a like the YouTubers tag a long time ago. I'll post it right here. And she was one of the YouTubers that I mentioned, like when I'm looking for inspiration, she's one of the people that I go for. She's one of the people that I'm gonna go look for, and I want to see. And I rewatched a lot of the old videos just for her tutorials. She has amazing tutorials on how to do like eyeshadow, and she's someone that I've learned from a lot, and I really appreciate her. And so when she came out with the palette with Odin's, I've never tried anything from them. I've been curious because I've heard good things about him. I immediately picked it up. Oh, there you go. It's the only thing I picked up from that collection, and I am super glad that I did, because honestly I wouldn't have had otherwise. These mattes are beautiful. The shimmers are a little bit chunkier than I would prefer, but there's these shades right here, the duochromes and the multi. So it's a duochrome, there's a multichrome. Are so cool. They are very vibrant multichromes, and I hit my uses so damn quickly. So it's so easy to pair it up. If I want to go warm, want to more cool, more pinky tones, so easy. All right, so overall, let's see all the palettes that I went over. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. We talked about 25 palettes. I did not talk about all of them. If you're interested in my thoughts of how, like the first couple that I did went down, please look at the playlist. I'll link it so you can check out the playlist and see my thoughts on those palettes if you're interested in that. If not, no worries, right? But if you are, because I obviously didn't do a rundown of them, that's what it is. I do want to talk about this particular project as a whole, and I think it was a great exercise. I got a lot of use out of the palettes, technically, but not really, because I felt so unsatisfied. I am someone that likes to do looks, not necessarily by picking one shade from here, one shade from that, one shade from here, and then like putting it all together. I'm more so of a one palette person, where I really just like to work on one palette to create complete looks. And so a lot of times I felt like I needed to, realistically, in order for me to hit the goal of using every single palette 20 times, I needed to do the whole thing where I'm pulling one here, one there, and one there for one look, because otherwise it's not realistically doable. Because I have it's not a huge eyeshadow collection, but it's big enough where I wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise. So it had to be done, right? It had to be done. That's fine. But I just felt unsatisfied because I wanted to use more shades out of the one palette. And a lot of times I make combinations and color stories that I didn't particularly care for, but I only did it because it would serve the purpose of usage. Like I did some like pink looks that I really did not care for, and was not in the mood for, but I needed to do it because it's the only way the palettes combined. Or I did some like smoky eyes I cannot care for. Same thing, because it served the purpose of they mixed well that way, and otherwise the palettes wouldn't make sense, or the look wouldn't make sense, and it wouldn't look pretty. So I just felt like I wanted to get more use out of one palette, and I just quite couldn't do that. I did make sure to do at least one entire look with one palette because I really wanted to get that satisfaction, but one time really just wasn't enough. I like my eyeshadows as they are, or my eyeshadow palettes as they are. If I didn't, I would depot them more, but that's not something I do. It's just not my vibe. So this whole experience showed me that yes, I can get a lot of use out of each individual palette. However, would it be a quality use? Right? This is a whole quality versus quantity, because I feel like I got a little quantitative use out of each individual palette, but the quality of those looks wasn't great. I didn't enjoy everything I created, and I felt a little like I was strapped and forced to do it, but at the same time I wanted to get more use out of my palettes. So it's like a catch-22 kind of thing, and we're not doing it again in 2022. I'm telling you right now, it's not worth it. So what I am gonna do in 2022 is a 1 week 1 palette series, and I'm gonna try to create 3 looks for each palette. Do I think a lot of people are gonna want to see that? Not particularly. Do I care? No, because I created this channel for me to get more use out of my collection and to talk to you guys about it, give you inspiration for things that you maybe already own. However, at the end of the day, I just want to use my eyeshadow collection, and I just want to show you what I'm doing with it. And that's what I think is going to bring me the most joy. It is not going to be every week is going to be a new video of that. It's going to be more scattered here and there, because I have a lot of other things planned already. And because I already have I have a chart that I keep track of all the makeup videos that I look. That I'm gonna create. I have a calendar, and I have the video idea and then the description of it and whatnot, and I have it recorded in my thing to use it to make 33 videos of this. If I need to cut a video to film something else that I think is gonna be more exciting, this will be the first video that I essentially cut out. But there's that. The point is, I just want to get more use out of my collection, and in a way that I know I will be satisfied and enjoy. And this just was not it. I didn't like it. I did not enjoy pulling 1,000 different palettes. It just wasn't my preference, and I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And I was thinking about it because I was trying to do this one so I can declutter some of my palettes. It was hard for me to decide what I wanted to declutter because I didn't feel like I got enough use out of each individual palette to be able to make a choice if I could declutter something, because realistically I was only using like maybe 3 colors out of the entire palette, because I was maybe creating a couple of different looks, but I was going for the same combinations that would work well with the other palettes. And if a palette was missing a transition shade, then that means out of this palette I had to use a transition shade because it didn't have it over here. And I was thinking about doing a panless eyeshadows this year, in 2022. However, I'm not going to do that anymore because I realized if I do a panless eyeshadows, it's going to be the same style as this one, where I'm going to have to use multiple palettes at once to create one look, and I don't want to do that. I didn't like it. I don't want to do that. So that really deterred me away from the panless eyeshadows project, which I thought I really, really, really wanted to do. And realistically, I just find it so cool. The panless eyeshadows is one of the coolest eyeshadow ideas ever. And seeing all those new shiny pans, it gets me all riled up and excited. But realistically, I just know that the formatting to be successful in that project pan is similar to this, and I didn't like it. I just didn't like it. It wasn't for me. Which means I'm not going to do that project pan, which means I'm probably not going to get too much pan in my eyeshadow collection, and I did want to, but I'm not. So how is that going to work out, you know? So, I don't know. I'm going to have to think about it. I want more pans in my collection, but realistically, I know that's not realistically how it's going to happen the way things are going. So, I don't know. Maybe I'll do it like a pan in every palette. Maybe down the line. I don't know. Give me some ideas. Leave them down below. I want to hear your opinions. Let me know what you think about that whole like formatting of like having to pull into different palettes. I know a lot of people like that. Like Alejandra Lisette, she's one of the YouTubers I like a lot. That's the way she likes to use her eyeshadows and to use her project pans. And I know a lot of other people that like to use their eyeshadow like that. I'm just not that person. So, it is what it is. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.